Former President Donald Trump suffered a trio of blows in the past 24 hours that political observers and legal analysts say may have put him in legal peril. His former chief of staff, Mark Meadows, was reportedly granted immunity by special counsel Jack Smith. And word is he met with federal prosecutors a number of times and told them he did not believe the 2020 presidential election was stolen and that Donald Trump was being dishonest in claiming victory shortly after the polls closed. In another damaging twist, former Trump lawyer Jenna Ellis reached a plea deal with Georgia prosecutors and said she should have never backed the former president. And third, his former attorney, Michael Cohen, known as the Fixer, faced off in court with Trump yesterday in a case where prosecutors are trying to end Trump's ability to do business in New York. Joining me on the morning show, Curtis Fallgatter, a former federal prosecutor in the U.S. Attorney's Office. Hey, good morning. Thanks for being here.
Good morning.
So all this combined, all these people accepting plea deals, saying that they will testify if they're called to, does this significantly enhance Donald Trump's legal exposure?
Well, certainly. And you've got lawyers, of course. Few folks are closer to a particular defendant than their lawyers in terms of discussing legal issues. And in this case, those three lawyers were involved in the three key prongs of the alleged fraud regarding the election. You know, there was the stolen votes, false claims. There was the false electors they were going to set up. And, of course, then there was a plan for Pence to not certify the election. Those three lawyers that have pled were all involved as architects of those types of components of the conspiracy that's been alleged in Georgia and in the federal indictment.
So let me focus on Mark Meadows specifically. He was Trump's chief of staff and allegedly the architect of many of the things that went on in the administration. Is he perhaps at this point the biggest legal nemesis for Trump?
It'll depend. Of course, all of them gave sworn statements. We'll have to hear and eventually what they said. Mark Meadows has apparently testified that Mark Meadows, believed the conspiracy was not accurate, that these were false claims about the election being stolen. Now, the issue is, did President Trump believe that? Mark Meadows has been reported to say he never heard from Mr. Trump, that Mr. Trump did not believe the election was stolen. Meadows believed that, but what did Mr. Trump believe? And, of course, Mr. Trump may never, ever admit that the election was a valid election.
Well, all he said is that everything that's going on is election interference in itself, these trials and these plea deals. That said, can he, and you're a defense attorney now, can he mount an effective defense?
Well, let's take Mark Meadows. As I said, Mark Meadows has apparently not said that Trump said that the election was stolen, so Mr. Trump can say, well, that's...
Well, he said he was dishonest.
Yeah, he said he's dishonest, but is Mr. Trump going to admit he's dishonest? And Mr. Trump can say, well, Mr. Meadows, you think that, I didn't think that, you never told me that. I don't know if that's true or not. We'll have to see what the Meadows testimony is. Take Jenna Ellis, the most recent one. You know, there's sort of three things that I would use if I'm Mr. Trump. One is she said, well, if I knew now what I knew then, if I knew then rather what I knew now, you know, I wouldn't have done it. Well, okay, maybe I didn't know that if I'm the president. The second is she said she relied on senior lawyers. I guess that'd be Giuliani and some of the others. Mr. Trump can say, well, I did too. And then the third thing is she's apparently upset that he didn't pay her legal fees. Now, why would she plead to a felony? Because she doesn't get legal fees. That's not a terribly strong argument. But Mr. Trump has those arguments to make about the credibility of her testimony.
So for Mr. Trump, it's basically he said, she said kind of deal going into the courtroom. So let's get to one of the fundamental questions here. In the justice system, we'd like to think that truth matters. And given the bounds of that legal system, could the former president face a level of accountability that the U.S. political system just can't match?
Well, the political system elects people and doesn't. The criminal justice system puts people potentially in prison, and those folks all got some probation-type deals, but then that's not something that would be offered to the president, not that he'd ever plea. He's going to go to trial. So if he gets convicted, he's certainly looking at some prison exposure in both state and federal courts.
But this will be tied up in the courts for quite some time.
Sure. I can't imagine any scenario in which the president would ever admit to any criminal conduct.
Meantime, the president continues on the campaign trail, raising money in New Hampshire. He compared himself to Nelson Mandela. Mandela, as you know, spent 27 years in South African prisons before emerging to lead the nation out of decades of apartheid rule. And he said, I don't mind being Nelson Mandela because I'm doing it for a reason. And at a rally in Iowa Monday, Trump said he would be willing to go to jail if that's what it takes for our country to win and become a democracy again. You deal with people all the time who, you know, face certain charges. Is this an indication that perhaps he's going, well, maybe this will be a reality for me?
I think it's more political speech. You know, he's pretending to be a martyr on behalf of the American citizens who had an election stolen from him. That's part of his claim. And of course, he's also compared himself to Jesus Christ. So he's using those kinds of comparisons to try to generate support for his election. I can't imagine he is serious about ever wanting to be ever in jail.
But whatever it's doing, and you're right, we're gaining support. He's gaining in the polls, and he continues to raise campaign money as a result of what's going on.
By doing
Curtis,
that.
appreciate you being here. Thanks
My
for your
pleasure.
perspective. Jen.